right, welcome to another conversation, another political conversation. I first, as always, want to first appreciate the people who have subscribed to this channel. It's very, very encouraging. We are heading to 6,500 people, and that is very encouraging. It gives me psych to keep thinking through conversations for every week, and we're happy with the kind of feedback we get. We try to read, we try to listen. We try to answer. I mean, last week I know I had been asked by somebody to do a piece on the conversation Rigathi had against Raila in Nyandarua, and I did that. It came from the comments that we had. This week I want to talk about early campaigns. There's an article that was done by the media this last week asking whether Ruto has actually started campaigning. And there's a part of me that wanted to ask whether he actually ever stopped campaigning. And I know if I ask that, people start saying, oh, you know, you're accusing the president of campaigning. But I think if there is anything I have learned in the last 5-6 years is how important it is to keep talking to people about what you're doing. When I look back to Uhuru's term as president, especially the second term, Uhuru kept saying he doesn't want people to do campaigns, he wants people to work. And some of us, me being one of those who are guilty of that particular position, strongly condemned anybody who was campaigning during that period and insisted that let's work first, let's do campaigns later. But the lesson I have learned when I look back is when you're in government, when you're in office, you must learn how to do both. You must work and talk. Right? When you're in position, of course, you have absolutely nobody expects you to do any work because you have work to do. All you're expected to do is talk, right? And when you're since you have no work when you're in a position, it's very easy to speak about the things you can do, about what you have seen can be improved and stuff like that. And especially the kind of country we live in, where politics actually doesn't stop. Think about it. We did an election last year in August. By September, we had finished the Supreme Court on the presidential elections. By October, Raila was already hitting the ground, talking about his problems with Ruto and his government. The guy hadn't even been in office for a month, right? And that has been consistent for the last 10 months. Ruto has been president for 10 months, and for the last 10 months, we have had people challenging the government, insisting the government has done a terrible job of leading this country, talking about the cost of living, going on the streets to demand for the cost of living to be reduced, and many other things, all led by the opposition, right? Now, if you are the one who was a president, or you are the leader of a country with an opposition like this, what would you do? Would you sit and keep doing things and just arranging your policies and getting your work done and hoping that people would actually see? No. From the lessons I have learned, from what I have seen, you must do what Ruto is doing. You must go to the rooftops of cars every weekend. Every Sunday you must go to a public space and talk to people about what you're doing and respond to the distortions that have been done by the opposition. I know how dangerous unresponded distortions are. It is very easy for somebody, a malicious person, to start a propaganda narrative against you when you're in office. And if you decide you don't want to respond to it, before you know it, it starts sounding like it is truth. I always remember before the 2017 elections, I was part of a communications team put together to try and help government explain about the Eurobond. And I always remember, I think it was Raila who went to the media and said that the Eurobond money had been stolen. And I think to date, there are people who still believe that Eurobond money was stolen, despite the fact that we're going to pay it from later this year. It was spent, well spent. Government can explain how they spent every shilling. But because an opposition leader went out and said the money was stolen, and nobody in government, at that time we didn't have the capacity to actually go out because the president wasn't going out to respond. Nobody ever went to respond about that Eurobond. There are people to date who believe that the Eurobond was stolen. So I asked myself, if you find yourself in Ruto's shoes today, and you have an opposition leader like Raila, who doesn't really mind stretching the truth, what would you do? Some friends of mine who are actually in this room with me at this moment in time told me they walked into a supermarket and they were just trying to look at the prices of basic stuff. And they can confirm that unga has actually come down to 165 shillings. Nobody's talking about it. Woe to all of us if unga was to go up to 300 bob. It would be breaking news. Everybody would be talking about it, right? And that's the problem about politics. Politics runs on bad news, on negative news. So if you're running government, you must stretch yourself to keep balancing the negative news with good news. For example, how would we know that this government in the last 10 months has employed 25,000 teachers? Never been done. All throughout history, the most number of teachers ever employed in 1 year is 5,000. This government has employed 25,000, and they expect to employ another 30,000 before the year is over. They will have employed 56,000 teachers. You just imagine the effect of that on our education system. They've employed 2,000 TVET teachers, people teaching people about skills, technical stuff. You tell me the effect that is going to have on our education system. And for me, education is a big thing. So when I think about that, for the first time, 30,000 teachers have been promoted, right? Teachers have gotten a pay rise, I think of approximately 7%, but they have gotten a pay rise. So when you think about the things that have happened in the education system, you are like, yeah. Now, if Ruto and Rigathi and the Kenya Kwanza government were not going to the public to talk about these things, all we would know is how many things are not working. We would not know about anything that is actually working. So somebody asked me, do I support the fact that Ruto looks like he's campaigning? And I was like, look, in the kind of politics this country plays, if you're in office, especially as president, I would strongly recommend you spend every weekend at least one day going to a group of people in the public and talking to them directly, explaining to them what your government is doing. Because if you don't do that, they are going to keep buying the narrative from the opposition that your government is not doing anything. And before you know it, everybody is going to think you're just eating public funds and you're going to have a problem. Let's talk about something else that has been happening that's affecting the ordinary Kenyans. And again, do we know about it? No. Hustler Fund has gone into groups. And in Nyeri, at the marketplace, women, you cannot tell them anything negative about the Hustler Fund. Why? Because they're getting their money, they're applying, you apply as a group, you confirm your membership as a group, and you get your money on phone as a group nearly immediately, right? These are things that are happening. Nobody's talking about it. For the first time since 2018, the government wants to register 500,000 elderly people into the Inua Jamii program. Again, we wouldn't know about it if government politicians were not talking about it, because politics is about communication, getting people to understand what is happening. And remember, it's a two-way street, because we have such an active and aggressive opposition. If we wanted campaigns to stop, we'd have to ask even the opposition to stop commenting about what government is doing. But for as long as they wake up every day to actually challenge government, to talk about the things that are not happening, the things that need to be happening that are not happening, and of course they exaggerate, sometimes they blatantly lie. Now, that is what the opposition is doing. If the government did not or does not consistently respond and also explain its case and go beyond and stay ahead of the narrative and explain to the Kenyan public that, look, yes, things are not rosy, it's never perfect. A friend of mine says progress, not perfection. Are we making progress? We're not perfect yet, but are we making progress? Are we better off today than we were yesterday? I would love to hear anybody wake up and tell us that we are not better off today in September 2023 than we were in September 2022 or in July 2023. Why do I say this? We have been talking about food. I've talked about unga coming down and the price of unga coming down. When you talk to people, they say, no, farmers went and planted. It had nothing to do with government. Of course it had everything to do with government. First and foremost, if we did not have a conducive environment for farmers to go to the farm and farm. Congo has farms. They're starving. A lot of countries in Africa have farms, they're starving because the political and governance environment that they are in does not support you to go to the farm and plant. You need a certain peaceful environment to be able to go to the farm and plant. But even more importantly, there's something called fertilizer. The government subsidized fertilizers and sent them to farmers, registered farmers. Now, the first registration that was done, farmers in Azimio did not register because they did not support what government was doing. So they did not benefit as well as the ones who took up the government invitation to register themselves and get fertilizer. So the second registration is going on. Now, what that fertilizer has done, it has boosted the production of maize from 44 million bags to close to 60 million bags. So yes, we can talk about good harvest, but it takes a farmer to go to the farm and actually plant maize for you to be able to harvest. If that hadn't happened, if the government hasn't subsidized, we would not have those extra 20 million bags. Unga would still be retailing at 260 something per packet. So I strongly support Ruto to continue campaigning, if that is what you're going to call it. Personally, I think when you're in government, you're not campaigning. When you're in government, you're actually presenting your case to the public. You're explaining yourself to the public. Just imagine if President Ruto had decided to keep quiet about the finance bill. One, despite everything he tried, it still faced a lot of hostility. Had he not gone out of his way and kept explaining, this is why we're doing this, this is why we're doing this, being honest about it and said, look guys, we're in a bad place financially, we need to tighten our belts to start being able to recover some of the financial situations we are. It's going to be tough. Hadn't he done that, what do you think would be happening right now? Hadn't he gone explaining the stuff he's doing about the motorbikes and things like that, what do you think would be happening right now? So personally, I think he needs to continue doing what he's doing. I think the president needs to continue going out of his way explaining. I think the deputy president needs to continue doing what he's doing, going out of his way explaining. I personally get very happy when the deputy president, because they tend to have a good cop, bad cop arrangement. So President Ruto tends to be the good cop and he tells you nice stuff about what government is doing. Da, da, da. Deputy President Rigathi tends to be the bad cop, and then the one who tells off people who are misbehaving or who are not doing the right thing. And as I keep saying, I love the fact that he told Raila off a week ago and told him that he has never done non-violent demonstrations. In fact, somebody who responded to the clip I put out gave me an award, gave me a name for what Raila does. Raila does not call for demonstrations. Raila calls for riots. There's a difference. And the first person who ever told him off was Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. So now imagine if Rigathi hadn't told him off. We would still be out here. If Rigathi hadn't taken the hard position and be the bad cop on the issues of maandamano, we would most probably not be where we are seated, where Kalonzo and Ishungu are able to sit in the same room and come to an agreement on this issue of national dialogue. I'm waiting to see, especially the point I really want to see brought into fruition, is the office of the official opposition leader. I think we all assume it's Raila. I don't know why we assume it's Raila. Me, as far as I'm concerned, Raila needs to retire. But if we can put an office of a leader of opposition, make it part of our structure of government, meaning we are paying somebody to oppose government, means we can hold that person accountable. We can challenge him when he says the wrong thing. Again, I'll go back to Raila. The other day he was singing about bullets and being handcuffed and being killed. You know, and he has this song he sings, ata wapige risasi, ata wakuje na, I don't remember what handcuffs are called, hatutarudi nyuma. So I keep telling myself, first, nobody is going to go and shoot at Raila. He has reached that point in his life. Nobody's going to shoot at him. Nobody's going to go and arrest him. You know? But the people who are singing with him are the kind of people when they go to the streets can very easily get shot if they throw stones at a policeman or get arrested. But Raila is inciting them while knowing very well he's in a bulletproof limo and nothing is going to happen to him. He has got bodyguards paid for by government because he's a former prime minister. You know? And because he's not an official opposition leader, we cannot challenge him. Assuming he had that office, we would ask him, we're paying you money. Is that what you're telling you to go and do? To go and incite young people to go and get shot by policemen or arrested. So one of the things I'm looking forward for in this dialogue is to have that office set up. It shouldn't be set up with an individual in mind. One day I could be the leader, official leader of opposition. Or one day I could be president and I want to have somebody in an office paid for by government challenging me for it. So progress, my final word, I think President Ruto, Deputy President Rigathi need to continue talking to Kenyans from the rooftops of their cars. They need to continue explaining the policies they're implementing, because if they don't do that, the opposition is going to distort them from the rooftops of their cars. So since people are already on rooftops, hata serikali wacha waende kwa rooftops wafanye maneno yao, then you have some balance, you have some moderated conversations, and Kenyans can make a choice, because now you have two sides of the conversation before you. As always, we are shooting this from Rware Central in Nyeri. We continue to invite you. Conferences. We've started event management. If you have a wedding, a small event that you'd like us to help support you, just visit us. Come talk to a charming young man called Newton. He's going to help you. China mandazi kama kawaida. That one is happening all the time. And soup na nyama choma. So karibu sana. God bless you. God bless Kenya.